Common Cause for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm very happy to be here. The League is celebrating a number of things this month, some historic events. February 15th, 1820 was when Susan B. Anthony was born. And February 14th, 1920 was when the League of Women Voters was created. It's also Black History Month. There's much to celebrate. But it's been feeling lately a little bit more like a different February holiday, Groundhog Day. And that's, I'm thinking about that, that classic Bill Murray movie where he keeps waking up on the same day and the same thing keeps happening things keep happening over and over again. Well, with redistricting, the League of Women Voters has been advocating for nonpartisan redistricting reform for decades. And sometimes we found that our position lines up with the Republicans and sometimes with the Democrats. That isn't because our position has changed. Ours has stayed the same throughout. It's which party is in the majority that's changed. In fact, in the League office, we have a 1989 letter from Dave Travis, who was the majority leader and a Democrat back in 1989, and he wrote a letter to the League. He was furious that the League was supporting that Republican plan to take redistricting away from the purer than the driven snow elected representatives of the people and giving it to an elite gaggle of lawyers. Well, what happened in 2011, but redistricting was done by a law firm, a private law firm in secret. So we've been advocating for redistricting reform. It still needs to be done. And we partnered with Common Cause quite a bit this year, and what the newspapers have been doing is tremendous, keeping this issue alive. The League has been, as you may know, the League challenged the voter ID law for all the reasons that Jay mentioned in 2011. It was the strictest in the nation at the time. We can't imagine what the people of Wisconsin did to deserve the strictest in the nation law. Our elections are good. They're known nationally for being good. What did we do to deserve that? The law places a heavier burden on certain groups of people. It includes the elderly, the disabled, minorities, women, the poor, the students. Women, it turns out, are having a problem with voter ID laws in other states. And why is that? It's because women are more likely to change their name sometime during their lifetime. And in fact, the Brennan Center at New York University has found that 48% of voting age women don't have a birth certificate that matches the name they're currently using. So if you don't have an ID and you have to go and get one, first of all, you got to get transportation to the DMV, and if you get all that arranged, then you get there, and to get a photo ID, you need to have a birth certificate. Well, you also have to explain why your name doesn't match the one on your birth certificate, and you have to have official documents to do that. You can't use the nice little marriage announcement from the newspaper list on the or whatever. So the League challenged the voter ID law in court based on the state constitution, and we won an injunction in 2012. And in a separate case, NAACP and Voces de la Frontera won also an injunction on the voter ID law. And we can be proud because of those injunctions, no citizen was disenfranchised by that voter ID law in 5 elections in 2012 and 13. So we're proud of that. Our injunction was overturned by an appeals court in 2013, but we believe that ruling was flawed. It didn't differentiate between the ID that's required by federal law in order to register to vote and the more restrictive ID requirements in the Wisconsin voter ID law to help you so that you can receive a ballot and vote and have it counted. Under Act 23, the voter ID law, if it were still in effect, you could be properly registered to vote in our state and still not be able to cast a ballot and have it counted. That doesn't make sense. And in fact, there's an estimated 300,000 currently registered voters in our state who are properly registered to vote, who don't have one of the short list of acceptable photo IDs in order to cast a ballot and have it counted. So our case is now before the state Supreme Court. Oral arguments a week from tomorrow on February 25th. People can go and listen and attend and observe. And we are confident that we have a strong case based on plain language in the state constitution. The Constitution allows the legislature to regulate when and where and how people can vote in our state, but it does not have the power under the state constitution to regulate who may vote. And you could be an otherwise qualified person, a U.S. citizen, at least 18, resident of the state, not a felon, and you would not be able to vote and have it counted if you didn't have that ID. So that's what our case is built on. Do I have time to talk about two laws, or two bills, or?
One.
Just one. Okay, 1854 would ban evening and weekend voting hours for early voting in our state, where it's coming up. The Assembly has passed it, and the Senate would be expected to have it soon.
All right, thanks.
When I go to this thing, I'm going to raise my hand, and I say, well, I got to sit up front. And just so this college audience can hear the other side, if we're talking about good government here, I guess I'm taking the anti-position. I was reading I'm an old print guy, as Scott knows. Did work for the Capital Times. So I was picking up my Sunday opinion page in the Wall Street Journal, Wisconsin State Journal, and I see here the views of the Capital Times. The views of the Capital Times. They're on this position. I believe, Scott, you can correct me, but I'm quite certain that in 1948, when the two newspapers essentially merged, State Journal and the Capital Times, and formed Madison newspapers, now Capital newspapers, incorporated, part of the deal was that Bill Edgewood, the founder and the editor and publisher at the time, drove a hard bargain. He said, I don't want the Sunday paper. I don't want the morning position. I want the afternoon. Well, that time was sort of pre-Milton Berle almost. And they had the circulation lead. But he said, one thing I do want in the Sunday paper is you get our opinion in the Sunday paper. That's still there. So I refer to the Capital Times, and for that matter, the State Journal, as the corporation that speaks. The corporation that speaks as if it was a person. Now, they have no dog in the race or in the hunt. In what I call the Kane-Feingold Act that was passed in 2002, because there was a generous carve-out for newspapers. Well, certainly the First Amendment talks about freedom of press. Obviously, there was no radio, there was no television in 1789, I think, when the Bill of Rights was passed. But they talked about freedom of speech and press. Those are the two methods. And not just newspapers in those days. If you had something to say, you went to a printer, Benjamin Franklin and Sons, and you said, print up the circular, print up the foul. I want to get this out. It's circulated among folks. These things were kept and passed along. So they had freedom of the press. It wasn't just for newspapers. Everyone had that freedom. Obviously, it took money. I'm willing to say here, folks, money is speech. Money is speech. This microphone didn't come free. Someone made it. Someone demanded to be paid for it. Money is food. Try to go to McDonald's and get a free hamburger. You might once, but not very often. Money is transportation. Money is clothing. Money is shelter. I may not have a microphone, but if I agree with somebody over there, I want that person to speak because I agree with that person. I want to send that person some money. Now, it's a misnomer to say that Citizens United turned over 100 years of precedent. It turned over precedent set in 1990. It was called Austin versus Michigan Chamber of Commerce. The Teddy Roosevelt era law still prohibits corporations from contributing to a candidate. What Austin did was to prevent a corporation from representing his position, saying, you know, don't ban the coal industry, it will hurt West Virginia. Shouldn't they be allowed to say that? The McCain-Feingold Act passed in 2002 said no. There's silence. 60 days before an election, you had a gag order. Now imagine that. At the precise time when speech is most valuable, you may not speak because we don't trust you people. You the people, the sifting winnow. You can't decide what's true and what's false. You'll be swayed. The Koch brothers are too smart for you. Don't you understand? We don't trust you. And that, my friends, I think is the essence of the progressive movement. Be quite honest. I call it the 4 R's. We're taking speech. We're restricting. We're regulating. We're rationing. And we're redistributing. Barack Obama would be so happy. I know I'm making some enemies here by getting a little bit political. But think about it. This person over here has too much speech. That's what campaign financing is. We're going to take his money and give it to you. Because he doesn't have enough speech. No one will contribute to him. No one will contribute to his cause. I've debated Ed Garvey so often. I said, Ed, it was because of your stands. And nobody, you didn't get the votes. Tommy Thompson, I dare not mention Tommy Thompson. I did work for the man for a while. He got more small donations than Ed Garvey got total donations. Now, I understand that there are some, it's not a perfect system. But I will tell you this. I trust the people more than I trust government bureaucrats. The Government Accountability Board had, I think it was 1.25. An act that said, if you spend $25 on a political campaign, you have to report it. If I'm a farmer and I buy a can of paint and a brush, and I paint on the side of my barn, let's say Russ Feingold is the gold. I've got to report that, or I get fined. I can't trust that my neighbor will paint his barn and say, no, he ain't. We don't trust those people. They said there's too much money is in politics. How much is too much money? How much is too much speech? The Constitution does not refer to speakers, it refers to speech. It doesn't say some may speak and some may not speak. Who's the press today? I'm a blogger, I think I'm the press. But to be honest about it, anyone with a Twitter account, a tweet, a blog, an iPhone is a journalist. I don't think that Scott Milford has any more First Amendment rights than anyone in this room. Just to pick on you, Scott, which is more fun than it should be. So, talk about how much money spent on speech. I think that the columnist George Will famously calculated, this was in the 2008 congressional presidential federal election cycle, that $5.3 billion was spent on campaign, this and that. $1 billion less was spent on potato chips. So how much is too much speech? Just in terms of very quickly, very quickly, and then I'll close up here, on the redistricting. And you hear it said so often, Democrats got 174,000 more votes than Republicans, but they only got 39 out of the 99 seats. Well, a big part of that is the Democrats ran in 95 of the 99 seats. They only left 4 open. Republicans ran in, by my count, 78. That's a difference of 17. 17 seats where Republicans got 0 votes. And let's face it, 76th district goes, I think, from Memorial Union and University campus to the Capitol on into James Madison Park, Willie Street, Kenny Park, whatnot. No Republican runs for that district. And yet Tommy Thompson got 7,000 votes for the Senate against Tammy Baldwin, who used to represent that district. There are Republicans everywhere, but Republicans tend to be a little different kind of people. They tend to put the green eye shade on, they'll look and they'll say, I really don't think I can win this. I'm not going to make the race. I got a farm to run, or a business, or whatever. Democrats, they'll make the race. I think that was Mark Bohan's strategy, is flood the zone. And they're running in Waukesha and Brookfield, we got Democrats. That's a little different. So you had all those races, number one. Secondly, I talked about the 76th district. Democrats, and this is true in Milwaukee as well, true in Chicago, they're almost, everyone's a Democrat in the big cities. Not so in the rural areas. So what are you going to do? You'd have to gerrymander to get the 76th district to go and get some Republicans in Dodge County. You'd really have to run that district pretty far. You'd have to run it past Melissa Sargent, you'd have to run it through Gary Ebel, and you'd finally have to get up there somewhere where you can get some Republicans. So the district, the geography works against that. I really don't have any problem necessarily with the Iowa system that I think we've talked about. I'm only here to say that it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. And by the way, under the Iowa system, which I think we could just quickly say, the equivalent of the Legislative Reference Bureau draws up the district, supposedly without regard to incumbents. And indeed, they put some incumbents against each other, some Democrats and some Republicans. But in the course of that, my statistics show that 97% of the incumbents get reelected that run. So no system is perfect. I want to just also say too that the numbers on this, by the way, this case went to the Supreme Court, or the federal court. And the federal court upheld it except for two districts. They said they're creating two pretty much Hispanic districts in Milwaukee, create one overwhelmingly Hispanic district. You might not get two Hispanic assemblymen under your plan, but they'll get one for sure. That's the only change they made. And in fact, they said the Senate districts vary from the most populous to least populous by 0.76 hundredths of a percent, whereas standard, the Supreme Court has said, is 10%. Well, within the standard of being equal population. Senate, 0.62%. Yes, the Senate's 0.62. I guess the Assembly is 0.76. But you get the idea, well with it. So the quote from the federal court is, so you're nothing. Numbers like these place a very heavy burden on the plaintiffs to show a constitutional violation. The burden, the court decided that they have failed to surmount. I want to point out one other thing. All these terrible, rotten maps. 60 assembly districts went Republican, 39 went Democrat. What was it before these maps? 59, 39, 1. There's one legislator from Manitoba who was an independent voter with the Republican. In other words, the same. The previous map was drawn by a foreign competitor. Senator Risser may disagree with it. So what's the difference? And the fact of the matter is, the governor, Scott Walker, won re-election through his recall by an even greater percentage, 7%, just a few months earlier in June of 2012. They're going to keep the governor, return out his legislature? Probably not. The other factor, real quick, is that most of the incumbents had a 2-to-1 edge, Republican incumbents had a 2-to-1 edge over Democrats running. And that has been proven that incumbents have an advantage. Thanks.
What I'd like to do is, again, thank all of you for coming out on a cold and snowy night. I think that what I gather from this is those who dismiss campaign finance reform, redistricting reform, and other matters that are on the Common Cause League of Women Voters Reform agenda as not being interesting to people are proven wrong, certainly here tonight, because you made an effort to be here, and that's living proof that these issues matter. And the fact that my friend Mike insisted on being here tonight shows that there is an interest in this issue, whether we agree or not, both from the left and the right. And I think that's something we should keep in mind. I'd also like to thank my friend Senator Risser here. It's an honor to be with him. It's been an honor for the 32 years to work with him in the state capitol. It seems that it was only yesterday I was 10 years old, answering the front door, and here was Fred Risser and watching the reaction from my mother. She was a huge fan of Fred Risser, and I'm sure she'd be pleased to see me here sitting shoulder to shoulder with him on an issue, something that has happened from time to time, but it isn't always the case. I guess I'd Also like to thank Scott Melford for really being a leader, using the opinion page of the State Journal to raise an interesting point, and to push an interesting point that I think has captured the imagination of people all over the state, and not just the people who are here tonight. I think it's important for me at the outset of this discussion here tonight is not to pawn myself off as any kind of a purist. The fact is, there are places we will disagree. There are places where we will agree tonight. But I think what is most important is the spirit in which all of us have gathered here tonight, whether we are on the left or on the right. What do I mean by that? As I've traveled around the state over the last 3 years at various gatherings, like the one here tonight, the overarching commonality I found is a deep regret that is held by all Wisconsinites. Doesn't matter what political flavor they are, the fact is there is a sense that we as a people are deeply and bitterly divided. And that bothers me, and I hope that it bothers you. It doesn't matter whether it's churches where people have changed which aisle they sit in or who they want to sit next to, golf course foursomes that no longer get played because people can't talk to each other, neighbors who won't talk across back fences, family dinners being ruined because of politics of the day. Am I ringing a bell with people in this room? That's why being here tonight is important, because we have an opportunity to do something about that. All of these examples that I've laid out, if we're ever going to get our state back on track. And I feel the first step is being able to forgive our friends and our neighbors, and yes, even some of our relatives. That we should focus instead of on the past, we should focus on the future, and that we ought to think about what can we do to encourage civil dialogues like we're having here tonight, so that we can reason together and find great commonalities that will allow us to move forward, as our state's motto admonishes us to do. I want to just leave you with a few things here before I continue on that I'll bet you didn't know. During the winter of what I refer to as the winter of our discontent, there's a story that I think you deserve to know about. At one point, when the Democrats took up temporary residence in Illinois, my leader assigned all Republican legislators to oversee the staffs of their Democratic colleagues, and I was given the task of overseeing Senator Risser's staff. I remember clearly opening the door, somewhat sheepishly, looking at, three wonderful individuals and saying this: look, I think there are a lot of people are wondering about state government. I'm not here to be a problem for you. Please don't do anything that embarrasses you or me, okay? That was the extent of my great effort to manage Senator Risser's staff. I also think you deserve to know that during the period of time that the Democrats took up temporary residence in Illinois, that there were conversations that went on. The fact is, the two of us called each other. What was the matter at hand? Well, I think the two of us knew that we had to find some way to get the state back together, to get the legislature back together, amid all of the consternation that was spilling over at the Capitol every day, both inside legislative chambers and outside. I think you need to know that. And I think that, it's been humorously pointed out here that 32 years doesn't get you to elderly statesmanship, at least in Wisconsin, as long as Fred Risser's around. I think the point is that he and I, like Tim Cohen and I want to make a difference for young legislators, and to point out that once upon a time the process wasn't quite so polarized, and while we had disagreements, we found a way not to be disagreeable. So how can we reform the process? Well, I think one way is to start with redistricting. That's why I offered this bill with Senator Cullen. Let me just offer this. I fundamentally believe that people should choose their legislators, not the other way around. The proposal that we have put forward, our bill, is fiscally responsive. And the bill creates competitive districts, which forces legislators to find solutions in the middle of the political spectrum, to indeed find common ground rather than to cater to the most extreme special interests out there. So tonight I look forward to a rousing discussion, certainly questions from all of you. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to be here tonight, to see all of you, and again, I thank you for your service.